In terms of economy, demographics, and general culture, most countries tend to be quite similar to their neighbours. Maybe not exactly the same, but the chances of, say, Central European countries being more similar to one another than those found in, let's say, Latin America or Africa is quite high. However, there are many countries that stand out in the region that they are in. Maybe it's their life expectancy, their GDP per capita, or political stability. So let's go through some of the most notable ones that I could find. If you can think of any others, please do let us know in the comments below. This region here is known as ASEAN, or ASEAN, which stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This group comprises of 10 countries in total, totaling some nearly 700 million people, across a distance of around 4.5 million kilometers squared. Now, although this isn't the poorest of all regions found on Earth, the GDP per capita of this group is rather low, at around $5,600, less than half of the world's average. However, there is one country in particular who absolutely smashes this figure, in fact by 15 times. Can you guess which country it is? It is Singapore. Singapore ranks as being one of the richest countries on Earth in terms of GDP per capita. This country is small but certainly mighty when it comes to business and global trade. Less than 6 million people live within this country, yet its GDP is some $500 billion. This ranks them as the 32nd largest economy on Earth, higher than Vietnam, a fellow ASEAN country whose population is some 100 million. Singapore is also one of the most developed nations on the planet, ranking just outside the top 10. For reference, the next highest ranking country in this region would be Brunei, ranking in 51st place. Singapore also ranks 6th in the world on the Global Peace Index, significantly higher than the region's average. So overall, Singapore is a very wealthy and highly developed country. Based on these metrics alone, it would kind of suit being somewhere like Central Europe as opposed to Southeast Asia. In terms of dominant religion, this is how our world looks. Christianity dominates the Americas, the region known as the West, as well as Russia and Southern Africa. Islam then dominates North Africa as well as Central Asia and the Middle East. However, there is one little country found within this region that is not Islamic, nor is it Christian, even though it is certainly on the side of the West. Can you guess which highly controversial country I'm talking about? It is Israel, the only country on Earth that has a Jewish majority, and in fact where around half of all Jews on Earth live. Incredibly, there are estimated to be only around 15.7 million Jews around the world. It isn't just religion that makes Israel stand out in the region that it finds itself in. The country has a very large economy, given its relatively small size and population. At $521 billion, Israel actually has a larger economy than that of Egypt, and by quite some distance. Which is rather surprising, seeing as though Egypt is significantly larger in terms of population and size. As well as Egypt having a huge head start, given the fact that it was, many moons ago, one of the most prosperous and influential civilizations. In fact, Israel's economy is so strong that it is larger than Egypt's, Lebanon's, Syria's, and Cyprus's combined. The highest ranking countries on the Democracy Index are all found in Europe, with the exception of New Zealand, who ranks second. The countries who rank the highest are all also found in the Nordic region, there's no surprise there. South American countries generally rank quite poorly in this index, with the exception of two, Uruguay and Chile, who rank 11th and 19th respectively, which gives them the full democracy accolade. Excluding these two countries, the next highest ranking country would be Argentina in 50th place. In this index, Taiwan ranks 10th, but if you were to go by official UN countries, then Taiwan should not be part of this list, meaning Uruguay actually sneaks into the top 10 most democratic countries on Earth. Now, going back to the Egyptian economy, although it is smaller than that of Israel's, it is still the largest in Africa, ever so slightly higher than second place Nigeria. However, with Nigeria's population projected to explode over the coming decades, it will likely lose out on its top spot quite soon. So as you'd expect, the GDP per capita of this continent is very low, at just $2,000, with the lowest being Burundi at a very worrying $245, the poorest country on earth by this measure. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Seychelles is the richest country in Africa by the same measure. At nearly $21,000, the average person here is 85 times richer than that of the average person in Burundi. This also means that the people of the Seychelles are just over 10 times richer than the average African. Mauritius, a fellow East African country, comes in second at some $12,000, followed by Gabon and then Botswana with $9,000 and $8,000 respectively. This means that Seychelles stands out like a sore thumb when looking at this figure across the continent. This region here, known as East Asia, is generally a wealthy, highly developed, peaceful part of the world, which also sees some of the highest life expectancies too. The economies and technology here is rather advanced. However, there is one country that is pretty much the complete opposite of everything just mentioned. A hermit nation which is like no other on Earth. It is of course North Korea. Including China's special administrative regions, 4 of the 5 places with the highest life expectancies are all found in this region, all seeing their people living on average over 83 years. However, the life expectancy in North Korea is just 73 years, a decade lower. North Korea's economy is also extremely weak and heavily sanctioned. And when it comes to the Peace Index, the country ranks as one of the lowest in the world. Yet across the Sea of Japan, where you'll find of course no other than Japan, you'll find a country who ranks within the top 10. Of the 12 countries found on the continent of South America, each has its own currency, excluding one, Ecuador. Well, that is at the time of making this video, as there are currently talks of Argentina ditching its currency in favour of the US dollar too. Chile has the Chilean peso, Brazil has a Brazilian real, and Colombia has the Colombian peso. But as of the year 2000, Ecuador uses the US dollar, although it does issue its own coins which are pegged to the dollar 1-to-1. In terms of language families, this is how our world looks. There are many anomalies and interesting details on this map, but there's one in particular that stands out for me. Almost all of Europe and the Western world are classed as Indo-European, with the exception of this green blob here. But can you guess which country it is? It is Hungary. So Hungarian belongs to the Finno-Ugric language family, making it different to all the countries it surrounds and that of pretty much all of the rest of Europe. Finnish is also of the same language family, but they are rather far removed. There are some crossover words, but not enough for Hungarians to fully understand the Finnish people. When it comes to population density, including China's special administrative regions, East Asia is home to some very densely populated places. In this region you have Macau, Hong Kong and Taiwan, who are the 1st, 4th and 17th most densely populated places on Earth. South Korea then comes in at 25th place. Japan, although not super densely populated as a whole, comes in 43rd place. The country does have some extremely densely populated places however, especially in its urban areas like Tokyo. And although North Korea and China as a whole aren't too densely populated, they both sit easily within the top half of the most densely populated countries. However, there is one place we haven't mentioned yet, a country which ranks as the least densely populated on Earth. Mongolia. At just 2 people per kilometer squared, Mongolia is the most sparsely populated country on the planet. For reference, China is the 2nd least densely populated country in East Asia, and yet its density is around 149 people per kilometer squared. Basically, 75 times more densely populated than Mongolia. The population of this once great country is a measly 3.5 million. By metro area, China has about 36 cities with a higher population than this entire country. What's absolutely crazy is that at the peak of the Mongol Empire, its population was some 110 million. That was around 30% of the planet's entire population. Yet today its population accounts for just 0.04% of the world's entire population. The World Press Freedom Index is an annual ranking of countries based upon the country's press freedom records in the previous year. It basically intends to reflect the degree of freedom that journalists and news organizations have in each country, and the efforts made by the authorities to respect this freedom. In this index, this is how our world looks. Western countries score very high, whereas most of Asia scores worryingly low. However, there is one exception, which you most likely can't see with your naked eye on this map. A country you probably don't know too much about. It is East Timor. Surprisingly, the country actually ranks 10th. The next best Asian country would be South Korea in 47th place. The 6 lowest scoring countries are all also found in Asia, being North Korea, China, Vietnam, Iran, Turkmenistan, and then Syria. When it comes to the side of the road that your country drives on, this is how the world looks. There are a couple of anomalies, but I think the biggest one has to be the UK and Ireland, who stand out like a sore thumb by driving on the left-hand side of the road. The rest of the continent, excluding Cyprus and Malta, drives on the right. The reason why Malta, Cyprus, and many other countries around the world drive on the left is because they are former colonies of the British Empire. Sticking with the theme of the UK, it also stands out on this map. A map showing which countries use the metric versus imperial system. 3 countries around the world primarily use the imperial system: the US, Myanmar, and Liberia. Liberia, founded by freed American slaves, adopted various aspects of American culture, including the imperial system of measurement. Myanmar uses the imperial system as it was once a British colony, and back then the British Empire used this system. The rest of the world typically uses the metric system, which includes units like meters, kilometers, and liters. Interestingly, the UK, along with the Republic of Ireland, is one of the few places to use stones as a unit of measurement for body weight. The UK also uses pints for beer, miles per hour for car speeds, and kilometers when referring to running distances. So there we have it, some countries from around the world which stand out on world maps given the region that they find themselves in. If you can think of any other good examples, please do let us know in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching.